In a talk with a friend of mine about recovering, we talked about it's really about discovering what we put in the attic of our consciousness and the basement of the consciousness, showing that not just all the beautiful parts, but the whole picture versus distracting people from it. Recognizing the triggers are often historical and how we hurt others because we hurt the mirror we refuse to look at, accept, or love. And when we learn how we get affected and own versus suppressing, and no longer believing that no one's going to love us if we show the true colors. By preparing for a rejection, it's a pattern that we recognize. Instead, we start to face the parts we're afraid someone else will reject. We can't build a castle that we'll ever enjoy if the foundation requires us to carry unsolved, unintegrated baggage. Never having someone honor and acknowledge, we might end up feel resentment at having to be the bigger person always, but we can start to recognize we don't want to feel like a failure every time we come to a stumbling block, because we're not just going off on blind faith. The skills are ours, even if we may disappoint others, even if we'll not live up to the expectations of a perfect performance to ultimately meet their needs. Our experiences of surviving letting the people down is part of becoming a whole. For me, like a whole Shayna, whoever you are, who can make mistakes on the road trip, but at least we're driving the car, our own car. We do have to pay attention because we may need to use the shoulder of the highway sometimes. But if we don't keep track of how we're reacting, which is called internal cues, like I try to do a deep breath, we may find ourselves struggling to keep up at 90 miles an hour without realizing we don't have to maintain 90 miles an hour anymore. The destination doesn't mean in the end that of the day that we're allowed to change our mind. That, in other words, it doesn't matter in the end of the day where we're headed. We can always change our mind, and if we don't accommodate for detours and redirections, we'll try to force going somewhere that doesn't even exist anymore or ever, or isn't what we thought it was since the last time we have been there. This attachment to outcome, like pushing, doesn't give us the best outcome, actually. Adapting can actually open up completely new and amazing possibilities if we're willing to let go of what we wanted that isn't actually good, or safe, or delivering, or maintaining, or satisfying. We end up with less identification with the audience, the critics, the observer of Shayna, and more with identifying with the feeler, the mover, the expresser Shayna. Balancing watching myself with being myself. Protecting myself from the external judgment by judging myself can actually go good or bad. If it's freeing, it's beneficial. If it's constricting, it's detrimental. Am I getting hurt or hurting myself? In terms of, now I'll share about a topic. So we talked about recovering is discovering. Now I'm going to talk about uncovering. Depression for me is, my mother was raised poor, my father was stingy, and my grandmother, like, I'll do anything to tolerate anything for love. I can stand up on my own 2 feet, sell out for support, self-sabotage. And this is how I inherited coping with self-destructive ways. Like, for example, taking me out, going out to eat as a bribe or reward compensation. But getting food is not self-care. Cooking for myself may be sustainable, but like treats and things like that is not the whole way. Always. Like, basically, self-destructive could be always using food as a treat. So there's this emotional hangover, victim, sedative, no serotonin, body pain, identifying as the basement or the attic. Addictive, like, that's the upbringing that we may have, putting ourselves in compromising positions where we cannot succeed, and willingly going into the shame and guilt, being afraid of neurosis on scary things, so hyper-focusing on what's familiarly painful. I didn't cut myself, but the idea that someone cuts their skin because it's like a familiar, superficial pain you could see and deal with rather than a deep emotional wound that feels like a new kind of hurt. Sometimes we have to not just let go, but push away when something's irritating a wound. hurting through the pain is like not knowing what it feels like to want to be a part of or be afraid of being abandoned. So there's layers to this. The initial parts of the wound may cut us off so completely, like it's in a cast. But the memories that arise from the past are often just like this feverish dream. As we get through the images and like in trauma recovery or in healing or meditations or spiritual practice or prayer, we start to see this version of us where like our ego's kind of watching, like the shell is kind of watching the inside, the meaningfulness, the fulfillment. When we start to be ourselves, when I'm myself with as many people as possible, it heals me. I can show up effortlessly, authentically, conserving energy because it relieves the anxiety of being found out or judged or mocked or rejected. And others are not put out by me more than I am put out by them. I'm not worse or more difficult or harder to get along with or less enjoyable or less beautiful. And then we get to really let sink in. We are all mirrors for each other, right? Like pointing at someone, is this a part of you you don't want to be? Listening to ourselves lessens the need for an ear, even let alone an echo. What we practice now becomes easier later, so we don't actually have more to offer when we don't need from that. In other words, if we're showing up as someone we're not really are, and we want others to like that version of us, it doesn't really give us anything. And we don't actually end up with more to offer because they're not really investing in the real us. They're not nurturing the real us. So when we open up to try new dynamics and experiences in relationships, literally as a beginner who doesn't need to be the expert, who's not performing, because the audience in this thought experiment or in this new way is supportive and encouraging according to a healthy belief system. Not like I'm a sinner who's bad from the start. Chas v'shalom. It would be a violation of the wholeness and holiness. Really releasing a lot with this talking today. Denying the body, the spirit, the mind, or the heart, what it wants and needs and craves is a type of torture. Because we could say it's not how I'm supposed to be, to have body pain, joint aches, inability to extend compassion, craving relief, tightness, anxiety, or fatigue. And in terms of unlovability, the double concealment, so the mirror really like kind of double concealment. Wherever I go, I bring chaos and confusion. This is really telling me that I have a lot, chasing people who affirm the false Shena that has answers and puts others first, is confident in sexiness, desirability, always joyous, between phases of doing well, I'm a failure. I've been damaged for life. People kissing me, humping, sex and eye contact violations of this body. And the times I didn't say no was my fault. People will give up on me as soon as there's an issue, potentially because I'm not worthy of the benefit of the doubt and patience that is required for commitment and loyalty. So this is just themes. Like when you go inward, you say, I love these parts, these fears and insecurities and griefs and disappointments. And I'm the devil, the cast out, the unkind, the needy, the user. I am the infector. I'm the infection. My best is not enough. I'll always be on the verge of rejection of my core self. Protect everyone from the things that happen to me, my fears and vulnerability and abandonment issues. There's no one who can understand me that I can trust and feel safe with. I'm not worthy of being heard or cared about or understood. Rejecting the parts of me through someone who rejects me in those parts, and not getting better at handling challenges or facing myself, rather blaming others and being the victim of circumstances. I'll stop here. It's pretty intense stuff, but I hope this is helpful. And you don't have to go straight in like to these deep, dark secrets you have with yourself, because sometimes a little bit of false identity, it's not that it's false, it's that it's just not exactly who we are. It just keeps us kind of in place till while we're in transition. So be gentle, be kind when you do this kind of shadow work, and you can do it. Wish you well. Bye.